The fluorescent lights of the East Nashville Walmart buzzed overhead as Emma Richardson pushed her squeaky shopping cart down aisle 7, her weathered hands gripping the handle with the kind of determination that comes from necessity. At 28, she carried herself with the posture of someone who had learned early that life doesn't wait for you to be ready. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her work uniform, navy blue scrubs from her overnight cleaning job at Vanderbilt Medical Center, still bore the faint scent of industrial disinfectant. Sophie, her 6-year-old daughter, skipped alongside the cart, her bright yellow raincoat a stark contrast to the dreary October evening outside. The little girl's eyes sparkled with the kind of wonder that Emma fought daily to preserve, despite their circumstances. Sophie's small hand clutched a crumpled piece of paper, a birthday party invitation from her best friend, Madison Clark, whose party was scheduled for the weekend. "Mama, can we look at the toy section?" Sophie asked, her voice carrying the hopeful lilt that always made Emma's heart clench with both love and worry. "We need to get your medicine first, sweetheart," Emma replied, steering the cart toward the pharmacy section. She pulled out her phone to check the time. 7:43 p.m. The pharmacy closed at 8, and she couldn't afford to miss picking up Sophie's inhaler medication. The asthma had been getting worse lately, especially with the changing seasons, and the prescription cost nearly $200 even with her limited insurance coverage. As they approached the pharmacy counter, Emma's stomach knotted with familiar anxiety. She knew her checking account balance down to the last cent, $247.83. After the medicine, she'd have enough for basic groceries and maybe, just maybe, a small gift for Madison's party. "Next in line," called Janet Morrison, the pharmacy technician whose kind eyes had become familiar over the past year. Janet was in her 50s, with grey-streaked hair and the patient demeanor of someone who understood that healthcare was often a luxury for many of her customers. "Hi, Janet." "Picking up for Sophie Richardson," Emma said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Janet nodded and disappeared into the back. Sophie tugged at Emma's scrubs, pointing toward the small toy display near the pharmacy. "Look, Mama, they have those friendship bracelets Madison likes. Could we get one for her birthday?" Emma's heart sank as she looked at the price tag. $12.99. It might as well have been $100. After the medicine and groceries, there wouldn't be enough. She knelt down to Sophie's eye level, preparing to deliver another gentle disappointment. "Here we go," Janet returned, placing the inhaler on the counter. "That'll be $198.45. Emma handed over her debit card with steady hands, though inside she was calculating and recalculating. After this purchase, she'd have $49.38 left, enough for milk, bread, some pasta, and maybe frozen vegetables. Definitely not enough for a birthday gift. "Sophie, baby, let's get our groceries and talk about Madison's gift at home, okay?" "But Mama, everyone else will bring something nice. I don't want to be the only one without a present." Sophie's voice began to waver, and Emma could see the familiar signs of an emotional storm brewing. They made their way through the store, Emma grabbing the essentials with practiced efficiency. A gallon of milk, a loaf of whole wheat bread, a box of pasta, frozen mixed vegetables, and a jar of generic pasta sauce. The running total in her head climbed. 31.42s. That left $17.96. Still not enough for the bracelet, and they needed laundry detergent too. As they passed the toy aisle, Sophie stopped abruptly. The friendship bracelets gleamed under the store lights, their colorful beads catching the overhead illumination like tiny promises of belonging. "Please, Mama, Madison is my best friend. She invited me to her party and I can't go empty-handed. All the other kids have money for presents." Sophie's voice cracked and tears began to well up in her bright blue eyes. Emma felt her own eyes burning. This was the hardest part of being a single mother, not the long hours or the physical exhaustion, but these moments when her child's needs collided with harsh financial reality. She thought of Marcus Thompson, Madison's father, who worked as an engineer at Nissan's plant. The Clark family lived in a nice subdivision with a two-car garage and could afford birthday parties with themes and decorations and gift bags for all the attendees. "Sophie, listen to me," Emma began, her voice gentle but firm. "We'll figure something out. Maybe I can make Madison something special." "No!" Sophie's cry echoed through the toy aisle. "I don't want to be different anymore. I don't want to be the poor kid who brings homemade gifts." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She had always tried to frame their situation positively, emphasizing that love was more important than money, that creativity was better than consumerism. But Sophie was getting older, more aware of the differences between her life and her classmates' lives. "I know it's hard, baby, I know." Emma knelt down and pulled Sophie into a hug, feeling her daughter's small body shake with frustrated sobs. "But we have each other, and we have love, and love doesn't buy birthday presents," Sophie wailed, her voice carrying the kind of raw honesty that only children possess. Emma closed her eyes, fighting back her own tears. Around them, other shoppers pushed their carts past, some glancing curiously at the scene, others pointedly looking away. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if her failures as a provider were on display for everyone to judge. "Sophie, please calm down," Emma whispered, aware that her daughter's cries were drawing more attention. "Let's go home, and we'll think of something creative." "I don't want creative. I want normal." Sophie pulled away from the hug, her face red and streaked with tears. "Why can't we have money like other families? Why do we always have to worry about everything?" The questions hung in the air like accusations, each one finding its mark in Emma's already wounded heart. She had asked herself these same questions countless times during sleepless nights, when bills piled up on the kitchen table and Sophie's medical expenses consumed what little savings they had managed to accumulate. As Sophie's sobs grew louder, Emma noticed a woman at the end of the aisle watching them with concerned eyes. The woman was small in stature, but commanded attention. There was something familiar about her platinum blonde hair and the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. She wore simple jeans and a denim jacket, her makeup subtle but perfectly applied. Most people would have hurried past, uncomfortable with the raw emotion on display, but this woman stayed, her expression soft with empathy. Emma gathered Sophie in her arms, trying to soothe her daughter while simultaneously fighting her own embarrassment. This wasn't how she wanted people to see them, desperate, struggling, crying in a Walmart toy aisle. She had worked so hard to maintain their dignity despite their circumstances, to shield Sophie from the full weight of their financial struggles. "Shh, baby, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay," Emma murmured, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. The woman at the end of the aisle took a step closer, and Emma realized with a start who she was. But that was impossible. Dolly Parton didn't shop at regular Walmart stores in East Nashville, did she? Emma blinked, wondering if stress and exhaustion were making her see things that weren't there. But as the woman approached with a gentle smile and knowing eyes, Emma realized that sometimes, when you least expect it and need it most, angels really do appear in the most ordinary places. Dolly Parton had learned long ago that the key to moving through the world unnoticed was confidence and casualness. Tonight, she had chosen her most understated outfit: fitted jeans, a simple denim jacket, and minimal jewelry. She'd needed to make a quick run to the store for some last-minute supplies for tomorrow's recording session, and the East Nashville Walmart was convenient to her home studio. She had been reaching for a pack of batteries when she heard the child's heartbroken sobs echoing from the toy aisle. The sound cut through her like a knife, instantly transporting her back to her own childhood in the Tennessee mountains, when wanting and needing were constant companions, and her mother, A.V. Lee, had performed daily miracles to make their meager resources stretch. As she rounded the corner and saw the young mother kneeling beside her crying daughter, Dolly's heart constricted with recognition. She saw herself at age 6, sobbing because she couldn't afford the same things as her classmates. She saw her own mother's face, etched with the particular kind of pain that comes from being unable to give your child something they desperately want. The little girl, she couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, was crying with the kind of desperation that spoke of deeper hurts than just wanting a toy. And the mother, God bless her, was trying so hard to comfort her child while clearly fighting her own tears. Dolly had spent decades in the spotlight, performed for millions, and won countless awards, but in this moment none of that mattered. What mattered was the mother's gentle voice trying to soothe her daughter, the way she held the child with fierce protectiveness, and the dignity with which she was handling an impossible situation. "I don't want creative, I want normal," the little girl cried, and Dolly felt those words in her soul. She remembered being 11 years old and asking her mother why they couldn't live in a regular house like other families, why their home had to be a one-room cabin that leaked when it rained. She remembered her mother's patient explanation about doing the best you could with what you had, about finding joy in simple things, about love being more valuable than money. All true things, but that didn't make the wanting hurt any less. Without conscious thought, Dolly found herself walking toward the pair. She moved slowly, not wanting to startle them or intrude on their private moment, but unable to simply walk away from such raw need. The mother looked up as Dolly approached, and their eyes met. Dolly saw exhaustion there and worry, and love so fierce it was almost tangible. She also saw recognition flicker across the woman's features. Surprise, confusion, and then a flash of embarrassment, as if she'd been caught in some shameful act. "Oh, honey," Dolly said softly, addressing both mother and child. "Is everything all right?" The mother, she couldn't have been much older than 30, struggled to her feet while still holding her daughter. "Yes, we're fine. Sorry about the noise. Sophie's just having a hard moment." Dolly could hear the pride in the woman's voice, the determination not to be seen as charity cases or objects of pity. She recognized that pride because she'd inherited it from her own mother, that mountain-bred independence that insisted on facing hardships with your chin up and your dignity intact. "Well, I was just thinking," Dolly said, crouching down to Sophie's eye level. "You know what I used to do when I was feeling really sad about something?" Sophie peeked out from her mother's embrace, her tear-streaked face curious despite her distress. "What?" "I'd tell someone about it. Sometimes just sharing the worry made it feel smaller. Would you like to tell me what's making you so sad?" The mother, Emma, Dolly had heard her call the child Sophie Richardson at the pharmacy, opened her mouth as if to politely decline, but Sophie spoke first. "My best friend Madison is having a birthday party, and I want to get her a present, but we don't have enough money." The words tumbled out in a rush, followed by fresh tears. "I don't want to be the only kid who doesn't bring anything." Dolly nodded seriously, as if Sophie had presented her with a complex problem, requiring careful consideration. "That does sound like a real dilemma. Madison must be a very special friend." "Then she is. She shares her lunch with me sometimes, and she always picks me for her team in gym class, even though I'm not very good at sports because of my asthma." "Now that," Dolly said, standing up slowly, "is the mark of a true friend, someone who cares about you just as you are." Emma was watching the exchange with a mixture of gratitude and wariness. Dolly could see the internal struggle playing out across the young mother's face, appreciation for a stranger's kindness, battling against the need to maintain their privacy and independence. "I'm Dolly," she said, extending her hand to Emma. "And you are?" "Emma Richardson," came the quiet reply, followed by a firm handshake. "This is my daughter, Sophie. I'm sorry she's been so loud. She's usually much better behaved. Honey, there's not a thing in this world wrong with a child expressing her feelings. Shows she's got a healthy heart and knows she can trust her mama with her troubles." Sophie wiped her nose on her sleeve and looked up at Dolly with renewed interest. "Are you really Dolly Parton? Mama has your songs on her phone." Emma's cheeks flushed pink. "Sophie, you can't just ask people things like that." But Dolly laughed, a sound like silver bells that seemed to lighten the entire aisle. "Well, I suppose I am. Though right now I'm just a woman who's grocery shopping like everybody else." "Why are you shopping at regular stores?" Sophie asked, with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "Don't famous people have other people shop for them?" "Sometimes they do," Dolly agreed, "but I like doing regular things. Helps me remember where I came from and who I really am underneath all the sparkle and glitter." She looked meaningfully at Emma. "Besides, you never know who you might meet or what you might learn when you're just being yourself in ordinary places." Emma shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure how to navigate this surreal situation. Meeting a celebrity while your child was having a meltdown in Walmart wasn't exactly covered in any parenting manual. "Well," Emma said carefully, "we should probably finish our shopping and get home. Sophie needs her bath before bedtime." "Of course," Dolly said. "But before you go, Sophie, would you mind if I asked you something?" Sophie nodded eagerly. "This present you want to get for Madison, what were you thinking of getting her?" Sophie pointed to the friendship bracelets. "Those. She really likes jewelry, and they're the kind best friends wear together, but they cost almost $13. And after Mama bought my medicine, we don't have enough." Dolly glanced at Emma, seeing the flash of pain that crossed the young mother's face at having their financial limitations laid bare by a child's innocent honesty. "You know what I think?" Dolly said, reaching into her purse. "I think Madison would be absolutely thrilled to receive a friendship bracelet from such a caring friend, and I think sometimes when we help each other out, it makes the whole world a little bit brighter." Emma's eyes widened as she realized what Dolly was doing. "Oh no, please, that's very kind of you, but we couldn't possibly—" "Now, Emma," Dolly said gently, "I hope you won't deny me the pleasure of helping out a fellow mother. We all need a hand sometimes, and there's no shame in accepting kindness when it's freely offered." She pulled out a $20 bill and handed it to Sophie. "This is for Madison's present, and maybe a little something extra for being such a good friend to her." Sophie stared at the money with wide eyes. "Really? I can really get Madison a present?" "You certainly can, sweetheart." But as Sophie reached for the money, Emma gently caught her daughter's hand. "Sophie, wait." She looked at Dolly with tears in her eyes. "This is incredibly generous of you, Miss Parton, but I can't let you do this. We're not charity cases." The words were spoken with quiet dignity, and Dolly felt a wave of respect for this young mother who was teaching her daughter pride and self-reliance, even in the midst of their struggles. "Emma," Dolly said softly, "may I tell you something? When I was growing up in Locust Ridge, we were so poor we couldn't afford to pay attention. My daddy did his best working odd jobs, and my mama stretched every penny until it screamed. But you know what I learned? Sometimes accepting help isn't about charity, it's about being part of a community where people look out for each other." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I also learned that the best way to honor someone's kindness is to pass it forward when you're able. So maybe this isn't charity, maybe it's just investing in the future, when Sophie here is all grown up and in a position to help another little girl who needs a friend." Emma was quiet for a long moment, and Dolly could see the internal battle playing out across her features. Finally, she knelt down beside Sophie. "What do you think, baby? If Miss Dolly is willing to help us out, maybe we should say thank you and accept her kindness gracefully." Sophie threw her arms around Dolly's legs in an impromptu hug. "Thank you, Miss Dolly. Madison is going to be so happy." As Dolly felt the little girl's arms around her, she was transported back to her own childhood, remembering the few times when neighbors or family friends had stepped in to help her family through particularly difficult periods. She remembered the relief on her mother's face, the way those small kindnesses had meant everything. But more than that, she felt something she hadn't expected, a deep sense of connection to this mother and daughter who were navigating their challenges with such grace and love for each other. As they walked together toward the checkout lanes, Sophie chattering excitedly about which bracelet Madison would like best, Dolly found herself genuinely curious about their lives. There was something special about Emma Richardson, something in the way she carried herself and spoke to her daughter that suggested depths and stories worth knowing. And for the first time in years, Dolly found herself hoping that this chance encounter wouldn't end when they walked out of the store. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with October sunlight filtering through the thin curtains of Emma and Sophie's small apartment. Emma had been awake since 5 a.m., her mind replaying the previous night's encounter with an unsettled mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. She stood at her kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, watching the sunrise paint the Nashville skyline in shades of gold and pink. Their apartment was modest, 2 bedrooms in a complex that had seen better days, but Emma had worked hard to make it feel like home. The walls were decorated with Sophie's artwork from school, and she'd managed to find furniture at thrift stores that, with some creative arrangements and colourful throws, gave their small space warmth and personality. Sophie was still asleep, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the previous evening. After they'd returned from Walmart, she had carefully examined her new friendship bracelets, selecting a pink and purple one for Madison and a matching blue and purple one for herself. She'd fallen asleep clutching both bracelets, finally at peace about the birthday party. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor and friend, Sarah Mitchell, a single mother of 2, who lived in the apartment next door. Sarah worked as a nurse at the same medical center where Emma cleaned, though their schedules rarely overlapped. "Coffee this morning? Kids are at my mum's. Need to hear about your Walmart adventure." Emma smiled despite her complicated feelings about the previous night. Sarah was one of the few people who truly understood the daily challenges of single motherhood, and she had a gift for helping Emma process difficult situations without judgment. 20 minutes later, they sat on Sarah's small balcony, sharing a pot of coffee and watching the city wake up around them. Sarah, with her short, dark hair and practical nursing scrubs, listened intently as Emma recounted the events at Walmart. "Wait, back up," Sarah interrupted, nearly spilling her coffee. "You're telling me that Dolly Parton, the actual Dolly Parton, was shopping at the East Nashville Walmart and bought Sophie a birthday present for her friend?" "I know it sounds impossible," Emma said, "but it really happened. She was so kind, Sarah. And she didn't make us feel like we were pitiful or anything. She made it seem natural, like neighbors helping neighbors." "That's because it was natural," Sarah said firmly. "Emma, you've been beating yourself up all night about this, haven't you?" Emma stared into her coffee mug. "I should be able to buy my own daughter's friend a birthday present. What kind of mother can't afford a $13 bracelet?" "The kind of mother who works 2 jobs to keep a roof over her daughter's head and make sure she gets medical care," Sarah replied. "The kind of mother who's doing everything right in an economy that makes it nearly impossible for single parents to get ahead. But Sophie shouldn't have to worry about these things. She shouldn't have to be different from the other kids." Sarah leaned forward. "Emma, listen to me. Sophie isn't damaged by your financial situation. She's learning empathy, gratitude, and resilience. Do you think Madison Clark, with all her family's money, has ever learned what it means to truly appreciate a gift? Has she ever had to develop the kind of problem-solving skills Sophie uses every day? Maybe not, but no buts. You're raising an incredible little girl who cares deeply about her friends and understands the value of kindness. That's not happening despite your circumstances. It's happening because of how you're handling them." Emma felt tears threatening again. "I just want to give her everything she needs." "You are giving her everything she needs. Love, stability, values, and attention. The rest is just stuff." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the morning traffic begin to build on the streets below. Finally, Sarah spoke again. "So what was she like? Dolly, I mean. Was she real, or was it all an act?" Emma considered the question carefully. "She was present, like completely there in the moment with us. And she listened to Sophie like what she was saying was the most important thing in the world. There was something about her that made you feel like she genuinely cared." That's her reputation in Nashville, Sarah said. I've heard similar stories from other people. She supposedly tips waitresses hundreds of dollars and pays for strangers' groceries. But usually, those are just rumors. You actually experienced it. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Thompson, the manager at Walmart, where she sometimes picked up extra hours during busy seasons. She'd worked for Marcus on and off for 2 years, and he'd become something of a father figure, despite being only a few years older than her. Emma, can you come in this afternoon? Need to talk to you about something. Not in trouble. Good news, I think. That's weird, Emma murmured, showing the text to Sarah. Maybe he heard about your celebrity encounter and wants the gossip, Sarah laughed. But Emma felt a nagging worry. In her experience, unexpected requests to talk rarely led to good news, especially when you were living paycheck to paycheck. Later that afternoon, Emma dropped Sophie off at her friend Jessica's house for a playdate and headed to Walmart. She found Marcus in his office, a cramped space behind the customer service counter that he'd somehow made welcoming with family photos and a small coffee maker. Marcus Thompson was 35, African-American, with the kind of steady presence that made both customers and employees feel heard. He'd been promoted to manager 2 years ago after working his way up from a cart pusher, and he ran his store with a combination of efficiency and genuine care for his team. Emma, come in, sit down, he said, gesturing to the folding chair across from his desk. How are you? How's Sophie? We're good, thanks. What did you want to talk to me about? Marcus leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Well, it's interesting. I got a call this morning from corporate. Apparently, someone contacted them about one of our part-time employees, specifically about providing that employee with more regular hours and maybe a path toward full-time work. Emma's heart skipped. I don't understand. Neither did I at first. But then I heard from Janet in the pharmacy about the little drama in the toy aisle last night, about how a certain country music legend witnessed one of our employees being an exemplary mother under difficult circumstances. Oh no, Emma whispered. She didn't. I didn't ask for... Emma, stop! Marcus held up his hand. Nobody thinks you asked for anything. But apparently, this person was so impressed with your character and your situation that she made some phone calls. Corporate is offering you a promotion to shift supervisor with full-time hours and benefits. The position starts Monday if you want it. Emma stared at him in shock. A promotion? But I don't have management experience. I just clean floors and stock shelves. You've been working here off and on for 2 years. You're always on time, you're good with customers, and you work harder than employees who've been here much longer. Plus, you're pursuing your nursing degree online, right? That shows initiative and long-term thinking. Emma nodded numbly. She'd been taking one online course at a time, working toward an associate degree in nursing. But progress was slow when you could only afford one class per semester. The pay increase would be significant, Marcus continued. About $12,000 more per year, plus health insurance for you and Sophie. And there's an educational assistance program. The company would help pay for your nursing courses. Emma felt dizzy. The promotion would change everything. No more choosing between medicine and groceries. No more lying awake at night calculating bills. No more watching Sophie's face fall when they couldn't afford something basic. Marcus, I don't know what to say. Say yes, he grinned. Emma, I've been hoping a position like this would open up so I could offer it to you. You've earned it through your work ethic and character. The fact that someone else recognized those qualities and advocated for you just sped up the process. But what if I mess up? What if I'm not ready for this kind of responsibility? Then you'll learn, just like everyone does. Emma, you're already managing a household, a child with medical needs, 2 jobs and college courses. You think supervising a shift at Walmart is going to be harder than what you're already doing. When Emma picked up Sophie from Jessica's house 2 hours later, she was still processing the magnitude of what had happened. In less than 24 hours, a chance encounter with a kind stranger had not only solved Sophie's immediate problem, but had potentially changed the trajectory of their entire lives. Sophie bounced into the car, chattering about her afternoon playdate. "Mama, Jessica's mom made us grilled cheese sandwiches, and we played dress-up, and she has a dog named Buster who can shake hands. That sounds wonderful, baby. Are you okay, Mama? You look different." Emma glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror. Sophie's perceptiveness never failed to amaze her. "I'm good, sweetheart. Just thinking about some changes that might be coming for us." "Good changes?" "I think so. Very good changes." As they drove home through the Nashville streets, Emma found herself thinking not just about the job promotion, but about the woman who had made it possible. Dolly Parton could have simply walked away from their troubles in that toy aisle. She could have offered a few kind words and moved on with her evening. Instead, she had seen their situation clearly and taken action to create lasting change. But more than that, she had done it with such grace that Emma hadn't felt diminished or patronized. She had felt seen, truly seen, perhaps for the first time in years. Emma realized that this was what real kindness looked like. Not just addressing the immediate problem, but understanding the deeper needs and working to create sustainable solutions. It was the kind of generosity that multiplied itself, creating ripples that would extend far beyond a single evening in a store. As they pulled into their apartment complex parking lot, Sophie spoke up again. "Mama, can we call Miss Dolly and thank her again for helping me get Madison's present?" Emma smiled. "I don't think we have her phone number, baby, but maybe we'll find another way to thank her." What Emma didn't know was that their opportunity to express gratitude would come sooner than she expected, and in a way that would deepen the connection between their families in ways none of them could have imagined. 3 weeks had passed since that evening at Walmart, and Emma was discovering that good fortune, like trouble, rarely comes in single servings. Her promotion to shift supervisor had brought not only financial relief, but a renewed sense of confidence. The increased income meant Sophie could join the school's aftercare program instead of staying with various neighbors, and Emma had been able to enroll in 2 courses for the spring semester instead of 1. More importantly, Sophie seemed lighter, more carefree. The constant undercurrent of worry that had shadowed her daughter's childhood was finally beginning to lift. Madison's birthday party had been a success. Sophie had proudly presented her friend with the bracelet and had been invited to sleep over the following weekend. But the encounter with Dolly Parton had stayed with both of them in ways Emma hadn't expected. Sophie talked about Miss Dolly frequently, not as a celebrity she'd met, but as a friend who had appeared when they needed help most. She had started paying more attention to other people's struggles, asking Emma if they could help when she noticed a classmate who seemed sad or left out. Emma was working the Thursday evening shift when Marcus approached her with an expression she'd learned to recognize, excitement mixed with slight disbelief. "Emma, you're not going to believe this," he said, holding up his phone. "I just got a call from Dolly Parton's management company." Emma's heart skipped. "What? Why?" "Apparently, she's planning some kind of community outreach event and specifically asked if you and Sophie would be willing to participate. They want to meet with you to discuss it." "I don't understand. What kind of event?" Marcus shrugged. They weren't specific over the phone, just said that Miss Parton was very moved by meeting you both and has been thinking about ways to highlight families in the community who demonstrate resilience and kindness. They want to schedule a meeting for this weekend if you're interested. Emma felt a familiar surge of anxiety. The promotion had helped with their financial struggles, but she still felt out of place in situations that seemed too good to be true. "Marcus, I don't know. What if this is some kind of publicity stunt? What if they want to use our story for something I'm not comfortable with?" "Then you say no," Marcus replied simply. "But Emma, from everything I've heard about Dolly Parton, she doesn't do publicity stunts with regular people. If she's reaching out, it's because she genuinely wants to help or connect somehow." That evening, Emma discussed the call with Sophie, who was predictably excited about the possibility of seeing Miss Dolly again. "Maybe she wants to be our friend," Sophie said with the straightforward logic of childhood. "Maybe she gets lonely sometimes, being famous and all." Or the comment struck Emma as surprisingly insightful. She'd been so focused on their own circumstances that she hadn't considered what the encounter might have meant to Dolly. Was it possible that a woman who could have anything she wanted might actually value the simple, authentic connection they'd shared? Emma called the number Marcus had given her the next morning. The voice that answered was warm and professional, Dolly's assistant, Rebecca, who explained that Dolly would like to meet with Emma and Sophie at her home studio the following Saturday afternoon. "Nothing formal," Rebecca assured her. "Miss Dolly just enjoys meeting interesting people, and she's been thinking about you both since that evening at the store. She'd love to show Sophie around the studio, if that's something she'd enjoy." Saturday afternoon found Emma and Sophie driving through the hills outside Nashville toward Dolly's property. Emma had dressed carefully, not too formal, but respectable, and Sophie wore her favorite dress, the blue one with small flowers that made her eyes look even brighter. The property was beautiful, but not ostentatious. Rolling hills, well-maintained grounds, and a house that managed to be both impressive and welcoming. They were greeted at the door by Dolly herself, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her famous hair styled but not elaborate. "There are my Walmart friends," she said, embracing them both with genuine warmth. "I'm so glad you could come. Sophie, honey, you look beautiful in that dress." Sophie beamed under the attention. "Thank you, Miss Dolly. Mama said this was my most special dress." "Well, you chose perfectly. Come on in, let me show you round." The house was surprisingly cozy despite its size. Family photos lined the hallways, and the decor reflected Dolly's personality, colourful but tasteful, with touches of whimsy that spoke to her playful nature. What struck Emma most was how lived-in everything felt. This wasn't a showplace, it was a home. "Would you like some sweet tea?" Dolly asked as they settled in her comfortable living room. "Or I think I have some apple juice for Sophie." As they sipped their drinks, Dolly's attention focused entirely on them, asking Sophie about school, about Madison's party, about her favorite subjects. She listened to the answers with the same intensity Emma remembered from that night in Walmart, as if Sophie's responses were the most fascinating things she'd heard all day. "Sophie, would you like to see my music room?" Dolly asked after a while. "I have some instruments you might enjoy trying." Sophie's eyes widened. "Really? Could I?" The music room was magical. Guitars of various sizes hung on the walls. A grand piano dominated one corner, and recording equipment that looked both sophisticated and well-used filled the space. But what captured Sophie's attention immediately was a small acoustic guitar, child-sized, sitting on a stand near the window. "That one's just your size," Dolly observed. "Would you like to hold it?" Sophie approached the guitar reverently, as if it were made of spun glass. Dolly helped her position it properly, then showed her how to strum across the strings. "Oh!" Sophie gasped as the notes rang out. "It makes such a pretty sound." "Music is like magic," Dolly said softly. "It can say things that regular words can't. Would you like to learn a simple song?" For the next 20 minutes, Dolly patiently taught Sophie 3 basic chords and a simple melody. Emma watched in amazement as her daughter, who had never shown particular interest in music, absorbed the lesson with focused determination. "You're a natural, sweetheart," Dolly said as Sophie successfully strummed through the simple tune. "Your mama should be proud." "I am," Emma said quietly, "every single day." Dolly looked at her with understanding eyes. "It shows. The way Sophie carries herself, the way she talks about you. You're doing something very right, Emma." As Sophie continued to experiment with the guitar, Dolly gestured for Emma to join her near the piano. "I hope you don't mind me asking," Dolly said quietly, "but how are things going since our meeting? I heard through the grapevine that you got a promotion at work." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "I don't know how to thank you for that. The job change has made such a difference for us." Honey, you earned that promotion. I just made a phone call to let them know they had a special employee they might want to pay attention to. But why? The question had been bothering Emma for weeks. You don't know us. Why would you go out of your way to help strangers? Dolly was quiet for a moment, watching Sophie with the guitar. Can I tell you a story? Emma nodded. When I was 12 years old, my family was going through a particularly rough patch. Daddy was between jobs, and we were down to eating beans and cornbread for every meal. One day, my mama sent me to the store with our last $2 to buy milk for the baby, my little brother Floyd. On the way to the store, I found a wallet on the side of the road. It had over $100 in it, more money than our family had seen at one time in months. I stood there for what felt like hours, holding that wallet, knowing it could solve all our immediate problems. What did you do? I took it to the sheriff's office. Turned out it belonged to the bank manager, Mr. Hartwell. He was so grateful he gave me a $5 reward, which seemed like a fortune at the time. But more than that, he asked about my family's situation and quietly arranged for my daddy to get work at the bank as a janitor. Dolly paused, her eyes still on Sophie. That job sustained us through some of our hardest years. Mr. Hartwell never made a big deal of it, never made my daddy feel like charity. He just saw a need and filled it the way neighbors should. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. And you've never forgotten. How could I? That kindness changed the course of our lives. It taught me that when you're blessed with abundance, you have a responsibility to create opportunities for others, not because they're charity cases, but because they're fellow travelers who deserve the same chances you've had. Sophie looked up from the guitar. Miss Dolly, could you teach me a real song, one that you wrote? Dolly's face lit up. I'd be honored to. Which one would you like to learn? Do you know Coat of Many Colors? Mama plays it sometimes when she's sad, and it makes her feel better. Dolly and Emma exchanged a look of understanding. Of all the songs Sophie could have chosen, she'd picked the one that most perfectly captured Dolly's own childhood struggles with poverty and difference. That's a very special song to me, Sophie. It's about my mama making me a coat from scraps of fabric when we couldn't afford to buy one from the store. The other kids made fun of it, but my mama helped me understand that love is what makes something valuable, not money. Like how Mama makes our apartment pretty with things from thrift stores. Exactly like that. Love and creativity can transform anything. As Dolly began teaching Sophie the simple melody and basic lyrics to Coat of Many Colors, Emma felt something shift inside her chest. For years, she'd carried shame about their circumstances, worry about what Sophie was missing, fear that she wasn't enough. But watching her daughter learn from someone who had transformed her own humble beginnings into a life of purpose and generosity, Emma began to see their struggles differently. They weren't victims of unfortunate circumstances. They were developing strength, empathy, and resilience. Sophie wasn't deprived. She was learning values that money couldn't buy. Emma, Dolly said during a pause in the lesson, I have something I'd like to propose to you both. Emma felt her automatic anxiety response kick in. What kind of proposal? I'm planning a benefit concert next month for families in our community who are working hard but still struggling to get ahead. Nothing pitying or condescending, just a celebration of resilience and community support. I'd love for you and Sophie to be part of it, not as recipients, but as representatives of the strength I see in families all over Nashville. I don't understand. What would we do? Sophie could perform Coat of Many Colors with me, show other kids that music and dreams belong to everyone, regardless of their circumstances. And you could speak briefly about the importance of community support, how when we help each other, we all rise together. Emma felt panic flutter in her chest. Dolly, I'm not a public speaker. I wouldn't know what to say. You'd say what you said to Sophie in that toy aisle. You'd talk about love being more valuable than money, about finding strength in each other, about the dignity of working hard for your family. Those are messages our community needs to hear. Sophie looked up from the guitar with shining eyes. Mama, could we Could we really sing with Miss Dolly? Emma looked at her daughter's excited face, then at Dolly's encouraging smile. She thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, from that night of tears and frustration in Walmart to this afternoon of music and possibility. Maybe it was time to stop hiding from their story and start sharing it. Maybe their struggles could inspire other families facing similar challenges. Maybe Sophie could learn that being different wasn't something to be ashamed of, but something that could make you stronger and more compassionate. "Okay," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you really think we can help others, then yes, we'll do it." Sophie let out a whoop of joy and hugged the guitar. Dolly clapped her hands together with delight. "This is going to be wonderful," Dolly said. "Just wait and see what happens when people hear your story. It's going to touch hearts and change lives." As they prepared to leave an hour later, Dolly surprised them one more time. "Sophie, I'd like you to take that guitar home with you. Every musician needs her own instrument." Sophie's mouth fell open. "Really? I can keep it. Consider it an investment in your musical future. And Emma, I want you to have my private number. If you ever need anything, advice, support, or just someone to talk to, I hope you'll call." As they drove home, Sophie clutching her new guitar and chattering excitedly about the upcoming concert, Emma felt as if they were returning to a different life than the one they'd left that morning. Not because their circumstances had changed dramatically, but because their perspective had. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were thriving, contributing, and preparing to share their story in a way that might help others find hope in their own struggles. For the first time in years, Emma felt truly proud of the life she'd built for her and Sophie, and she had a feeling that this was just the beginning of something beautiful. The Ryman Auditorium buzzed with anticipation on a crisp November evening, its historic walls preparing to witness something special. Emma stood in the wings, her heart pounding as she watched the sold-out crowd take their seats. The Hearts and Hands benefit concert had drawn people from all over Nashville and beyond. Families, music lovers, and community leaders united in their desire to support local families working toward better lives. Sophie sat on a stool nearby, quietly practicing her chords on the small guitar Dolly had given her. In the 3 weeks since their visit to Dolly's home, Sophie had practiced diligently, her natural musical ability blossoming under the encouragement of her weekly lessons with James Crawford, a music teacher whose services Dolly had quietly arranged and funded. "You ready, little star?" Dolly appeared beside them, resplendent in a sequined jacket that caught the stage lights like captured starlight, yet somehow managing to look approachable and warm despite the glamour. "I think so," Sophie replied, though her voice carried a slight tremor of nerves. "What if I forget the words?" "Then you'll make up new ones," Dolly said with a wink. "Some of the best songs come from happy accidents. Besides, I'll be right there with you." Emma smoothed her daughter's hair, then straightened her own dress, a simple black number that Sarah had helped her choose, elegant but not trying too hard. She'd spent hours practicing her brief speech, but now that the moment was approaching, her carefully rehearsed words seemed to be dissolving in her mind. "Emma," Dolly said, noting her anxious expression, "remember what we talked about. You're not here because you need saving. You're here because your story represents the strength and resilience that exists in families all over this city. People need to hear that working hard and loving each other matters, even when times are tough." The first half of the concert had been magical. Dolly had performed some of her classic songs, interspersed with stories about growing up poor in the Tennessee mountains, and how those experiences had shaped her music and her values. The audience was completely captivated, hanging on every word and note. Now came the portion of the evening that Emma had both anticipated and dreaded. The community spotlight segment, where she and Sophie would share their story, and Sophie would perform with Dolly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dolly's voice carried clearly through the auditorium as she returned to the stage alone. "Tonight is about celebrating the strength I see every day in our Nashville community. Families who work multiple jobs to make ends meet, Single parents who sacrifice their own dreams to give their children opportunities. Kids who learn early that love is more valuable than money. Emma could see people in the audience nodding, recognizing themselves or their neighbors in Dolly's words. A few weeks ago, I had the privilege of meeting a mother and daughter who reminded me why I do what I do. They were having a difficult moment in a very ordinary place, but what I witnessed was extraordinary. The kind of love and strength that doesn't make headlines but sustains communities. Dolly gestured toward the wings. I'd like you to meet Emma and Sophie Richardson. Emma's legs felt unsteady as she walked onto the stage, Sophie's small hand clasped firmly in hers. The auditorium lights were bright, making it difficult to see individual faces, but she could feel the attention of nearly 3,000 people focused on them. Emma, Dolly said gently, would you like to share your story with our friends? Emma approached the microphone, her mouth dry. She looked out at the sea of faces, then down at Sophie, who was smiling encouragingly up at her. I'm not used to speaking in front of people, Emma began, her voice barely above a whisper. The sound technician quickly adjusted her microphone levels. But Dolly, Miss Parton, asked me to talk about something I do know about, which is being a single mother and trying to do right by your child, even when everything feels impossible. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. 3 weeks ago, my daughter Sophie was crying in the toy aisle at Walmart because she wanted to buy her best friend a birthday present, and we didn't have enough money after paying for her asthma medication. I was trying to explain to her why we couldn't afford a $13 bracelet, and I felt like I was failing her as a mother. Emma paused, looking down at Sophie again for strength. But then this kind woman appeared, and yes, it turned out to be Dolly Parton shopping for batteries. And she didn't just help us with the immediate problem. She saw something in our situation that I couldn't see myself. What did she see? Dolly prompted gently. She saw that we weren't broken or pitiful or lacking in anything important. She saw a little girl who cared deeply about her friend and a family that was working hard and taking care of each other. She helped me understand that struggling financially doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're fighting, and that's something to be proud of. Emma could see people in the audience wiping their eyes, and she realized that her story was resonating in ways she hadn't expected. The gift Dolly gave us wasn't really the $20 for the bracelet or even the job opportunity that followed, though I'm incredibly grateful for both. The real gift was helping me see our life differently. Sophie isn't deprived because we shop at thrift stores or count every penny. She's learning empathy, gratitude, and resilience. She's developing a work ethic and an appreciation for kindness that money can't buy. Emma looked directly into the audience now, her nervousness replaced by genuine conviction. If you're out there struggling to make ends meet, working multiple jobs, choosing between paying bills and buying extras for your kids, you're not alone. And you're not failing. You're doing the hardest job in the world with grace and love, and that matters more than any amount of money in the bank. The applause started slowly, then built to a sustained ovation that seemed to go on forever. Emma felt tears streaming down her face, but for the first time they were tears of pride rather than frustration or embarrassment. Now, Dolly said as the applause died down, Sophie has been working very hard to learn a special song for tonight. Sophie, honey, are you ready to show everyone what you've been practicing? Sophie nodded and took her position at the second microphone, her small guitar strapped across her shoulder. Emma moved to stand beside Dolly at the piano. This song, Dolly told the audience, is about understanding that what makes something valuable isn't how much it costs, but how much love went into it. Sophie, whenever you're ready. The opening notes of Coat of Many Colors rang out clear and sweet, Sophie's small voice carrying the familiar melody with surprising confidence. When she reached the chorus, Dolly's rich harmonies joined in, creating a sound that seemed to wrap around the entire auditorium like a warm embrace. Emma watched her daughter perform on the stage of the historic Ryman Auditorium, the same venue where country music legends had launched their careers, and marveled at how far they'd come from that tearful evening in Walmart. Sophie wasn't just singing. She was telling their story through music, showing everyone present that dreams and talent belong to all children, regardless of their family's income. As the song reached its final verse, something magical happened. Voices from the audience began joining in, people who knew the words from their own childhoods or their own struggles with feeling different or left out. The entire auditorium became a choir, 3,000 voices united in a song about finding beauty and value in unexpected places. When the last note faded, the standing ovation seemed to shake the old building's foundations. Sophie curtsied like she'd been taught in her school program, then ran to Emma for a hug that lifted her clear off the ground. "You were perfect, baby," Emma whispered in her ear. "I'm so proud of you." Dolly approached them both, her own eyes bright with tears. "That," she announced to the audience, "is what happens when talent meets opportunity and courage. Sophie Richardson, ladies and gentlemen, remember that name." As they left the stage, Emma felt transformed. Not because their circumstances had changed dramatically, though the concert had raised enough money to provide educational scholarships and emergency assistance to dozens of local families, but because she finally understood what Dolly had been trying to show her from the beginning. Their story wasn't one of lack or limitation. It was a story of love conquering circumstance, of community supporting its members, of the extraordinary strength that ordinary people display every single day. Later, at the reception following the concert, Emma found herself surrounded by other parents, sharing their own stories of struggle and triumph. A construction worker's wife talked about her daughter's college dreams despite their uncertain income. A teacher spoke about supporting his elderly mother while raising 3 children. A nurse, someone who worked at the same medical center as Emma, described juggling shifts to care for her disabled son. What struck Emma most was the absence of shame in these conversations. Here, in this room full of people who had been touched by their story, struggle was not something to hide, but something to acknowledge with dignity and mutual support. "Emma," a familiar voice said behind her. She turned to find Marcus Thompson, her manager from Walmart, looking sharp in a suit she'd never seen him wear. "Marcus, I didn't know you were coming tonight. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. You and Sophie were incredible up there, but I wanted to tell you something. After tonight, after seeing what you're capable of when you let your light shine, I think you should reconsider your long-term plans." "What do you mean?" "You're a natural leader, Emma. The way you spoke tonight, the way you connect with people. Have you ever thought about management beyond retail? About using your experiences to help other families in similar situations?" Emma blinked in surprise. "I'm still working on my nursing degree." "I know, and that's wonderful, but I also know the local community center has been looking for someone to coordinate their family services program. Someone who understands the challenges firsthand and can speak authentically about solutions. The pay would be comparable to your current position, but the impact—" Marcus smiled. "I think you'd find it fulfilling in ways you might not expect." And as Emma considered this unexpected possibility, Sophie appeared at her side, still clutching her guitar and glowing with post-performance energy. "Mama, Miss Dolly wants to know if we can come visit her studio again next week. She says she wants to teach me how to write my own songs." Emma looked across the room to where Dolly was deep in conversation with several other families, still giving her complete attention to each person who approached her. In the weeks since their first meeting, Emma had come to understand that this was simply who Dolly was, not performing kindness for an audience, but living it as a fundamental part of her character. "Can we, Mama? Please." "Of course we can, sweetheart. Miss Dolly has become a very important friend to us." "The most important friend," Sophie corrected. "She taught us that we're not poor. We're rich in all the ways that matter." Emma felt tears threaten again at her daughter's wisdom. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave, Dolly approached them one final time. "I can't tell you how proud I am of you both tonight," she said, embracing them warmly. "Emma, your speech was more powerful than anything I could have written, because it came straight from your heart. And Sophie, honey, you sang like an angel." "Thank you for everything," Emma said, "for seeing us, for believing in us, for helping us see ourselves differently. Honey, I didn't change anything about you. I just held up a mirror so you could see what was already there. Strength, love, resilience, and grace. Those are gifts you've always had. You just needed someone to remind you of their value." As they walked to their car, Sophie skipping ahead with her guitar case, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 6 weeks ago, she had been a struggling single mother, ashamed of their circumstances and worried that she was failing her daughter. Tonight, she was a woman who had shared her story with thousands of people and inspired them to see their own struggles as sources of strength rather than shame. The transformation hadn't happened because their external circumstances had improved dramatically, though the job promotion had certainly helped. It had happened because someone had seen their worth and reflected it back to them, showing them that their love for each other and their determination to build a good life together were the most valuable things they possessed. "Mama," Sophie said as Emma buckled her into her car seat, "do you think we'll always be friends with Miss Dolly?" Emma looked back toward the Ryman Auditorium, where Dolly was still visible through the windows, saying goodbye to the last few families. She was taking time with each person, making sure they felt heard and valued, just as she had with Emma and Sophie in that Walmart toy aisle. "I think we'll be friends for a very long time, baby. The best friendships are built on understanding and caring for each other, and Miss Dolly understands us in a very special way, because she used to be poor like us, because she remembers what it feels like to need kindness, and she never forgot how important it is to pass that kindness forward." As they drove home through the Nashville streets, Emma felt a deep sense of completion, as if a circle that had begun in struggle and shame had closed in triumph and community. They were still the same family they'd been that night at Walmart. Emma was still a single mother working hard to provide for her daughter, and Sophie was still a 6-year-old, learning to navigate a world that sometimes seemed unfair. But everything had changed in the most important ways. They were no longer isolated in their struggles, no longer ashamed of their circumstances, no longer afraid to dream of better things ahead. They had learned that their worth wasn't measured by their bank account, but by their capacity for love, resilience, and connection with others. And they had discovered that sometimes, when you least expect it, angels really do appear in the toy aisles of ordinary stores, not to rescue you from your life, but to help you see the extraordinary beauty and strength that was there all along.